Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. We come back to a comment from Shep Easy Sweet Spot. KJ is sneaky elusive. I agree. I think that KJ Osborne, once he gets more touches in this New England Patriots system, if he even does get the lion's share of targets as a wide receiver in this system, then I think he can have a breakout performance or two. But right now, I still need to see more out of the Patriots passing game to give me faith in that sentiment. But I do agree that once KJ gets going, he could be someone who could be a valuable asset to a fantasy team. Maybe as a flex player or on your bench. But let's look ahead to some of the best bets in terms of prop bets for the general Week 3 slate. We did Thursday Night Football, look some interesting prop bets for that game. Let's look at Sunday's slate of games. We have an interesting one. Let's start off actually with the return of a veteran QB. I don't think I would see this coming. Didn't have it in my 2024 NFL season start bingo card. How about Andy Dalton? Let's talk about Andy. He's going up against the Bengals in his first game back as a quote-unquote Panther starter after they benched Bryce Young. And I don't necessarily think it's the best matchup for Andy. So I'm going to take him under 224.5 passing yards at minus 145. I think this is a pretty straightforward bet. Yes, Andy Dalton, we've seen him come in certain moments in the Bryce Young era, whether it be through injury or whether it be through bad performance from Bryce Young. We've seen Andy Dalton in the system. But this year's Panthers team just feels different in a very bad, negative way. I don't like their O-line. Ika Mekwonu, their promising left tackle, has declined rather than improved throughout his career. And Andy Dalton should not feel comfortable in this Panthers setting, no matter how much of a veteran he is in this league. He's had very nice games, mind you, for Carolina in his career as a backup there. But at the end of the day, this Panthers team just has an eerie feeling to it that does not make me have much confidence in Andy Dalton rejuvenating it by any means. And a Bengals team who's going to come in pissed off about their loss to the Chiefs, a lot of anger, a lot of tension built up in this team that they just want to let out on the football field, and I think this could get ugly quickly for Carolina. And while the Bengals defense has been somewhat impressive, I don't necessarily think it's been the best. I don't think the Panthers are the right offense to exploit that at all. I think that while I appreciate the fact that Dave Canales wants to try something new and Andy Dalton kind of fits the mold of guys he's worked with like Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield who are trying to quote-unquote rejuvenate their careers, I still think that this is not the right time or game for Andy Dalton to put up any sort of gaudy stats. So under has to be the wave with Andy Dalton for this game. Let's go over to the PNW in terms of their opponents. The Seattle Seahawks will be playing the Miami Dolphins. Let's talk about Devon Achane in this game. Now, you would think that I would say you should take the over in terms of Devon Achane because of all the running that I would expect Miami to do in this game because of the quarterback situation. But I think it's going to be very different. I think that Achane can be used often in this game, but he's going to be used more in a sense to catch Seattle by surprise. I think that Seattle's run D is still getting up to snuff, and the secondary is perhaps the strong suit of this defense. But I still don't think Devon Achane is the kind of player who will have much faith in over this coming weeks, even though, he's in a situation where he could get the lion's share of touches in that backfield. So I'm going to take the under here, actually, under 70.5 rush yards at minus 110. And the play here is kind of weird because this is one of those games where you kind of feel like Miami could be in it, but Seattle kind of should be foaming at the mouth here in terms of playing a team that's a little bit vulnerable right now. So, Devon Achane, while he could be an X factor, I just feel like Mike McDaniel will want to try to get the best out of whoever starts at the QB position, whether it be Skylar Thompson or Snoop Huntley. I think that, they're going to try and create what they can out of those two guys. So Devon Achane, like I said, I'm not as confident as I am in him now than I was in the midst of his breakout season last year. But he can have a chance to break out a couple big gains here and catch Seattle by surprise. We'll have to see. But let's talk about the receivers, shall we? Let's talk about one receiver in particular who kind of had a breakout game in his game against the LA Rams. His first game as a Arizona Cardinal, where we really saw him shine and be the wide receiver one we know he can be. Marvin Harrison Jr. He had over 130 yards in just one quarter, 29.9 fantasy points in one quarter for that matter. And he's really starting to shine for this Arizona Cardinals team. Really going to make them very dangerous going forward, especially in the NFC West. They can be a feisty, frisky team there. This offense is really rounding into form, and if he's the focal point of it all, if him and Kyler can get their connection going even more and more and more, then I really think Marvin Harrison will be a guy you're confident in betting in terms of prop bets. Over 57.5 receiving yards is the bet for him this week, so I'm going to take it. And I'm confident that Marvin Harrison Jr. will make good on his promise as a wide receiver one for the Arizona Cardinals week in, week out. Because of the fact that now that Kyler is comfortable again, now he looks like himself. We were kind of worried about him coming back from that ACL injury, but no worries so far from the Arizona Cardinals side of things, so look for that connection to continue growing. And then, last but not least, let's talk about Stephon Diggs, because we've now seen enough out of this Houston Texans offense to the point where we think that this team can actually work. Because my main concern with a guy like Stephon Diggs coming into that young team, especially that young receiving core, was the fact that tensions could arise if things didn't go his way. But, as we've seen, he seems more comfortable than ever. So does Stroud. So does Collins. Like, Collins' production hasn't gone down the slightest, which I'm very shocked and surprised by, because I was worried. I was worried for Nico Collins' production, but so far he's been doing well. Tank Dell really, hasn't had that promising a start, but I know he will continue to contribute as a receiver there. And then Stephon Diggs kind of fits like a glove as well. He's had his share of nice catches. He's been good in the red zone especially. So this weekend against the Minnesota Vikings, I'm going to say he's going to get the over against his former team, over 44.5 receiving yards. I think that connection between him and Stroud is really going to allow the Texans to really stretch this Minnesota Vikings defense, who I will talk about, though, on the flip side of things as I rank my defenses for this week. But at the end of the day, all of these kind of rankings or prop bets show you that this is the point in time where you can really start to see certain players come to life. Notice how I mentioned two players, one in Andy Dalton and one in Marvin Harrison, who are opposite end of the spectrum in terms of their career, but have unique opportunities to really change the trajectory of their respective teams. For Andy Dalton, well, I don't have much hope for him, as this Carolina offense really does not give me faith. He still is a serviceable, competent veteran QB who has had experience playing in this system. And Dave Canales likes working with guys who have experience in the league, but just need that little rejuvenation period for them to really get back up to speed. And then with Marvin Harrison, obviously the rookie, had his kind of trials and tribulations early on in this system. We saw in the first game and the second game, it was like night and day. Kyler and him had that connection down pat from the first snap. And I think it's going to continue as weeks go on and they get more comfortable together. But then you have two guys in Devon Achane and Stephon Diggs, who I really think are two players who are unique in their abilities to help teams, but can also lead to the detriment of their teams as well. In Devon Achane's case, he's very much a kind of guy who, if he doesn't get the football, I don't necessarily see the use for him in the Miami Dolphins offense. Because if he can't do more than just run with speed and get yards after the carry and yards after contact, then he's really not necessarily that talent outside of that. He can get you the explosive play, but I want to see my running backs doing it all in their offensive schemes. And I don't think Devon Achane, quote-unquote, does it all for the Miami Dolphins. But that being said, he's an interesting kind of piece for them in this period where they're trying to figure out what the quarterback situation will look like. And then Stephon Diggs, he's a blessing and a curse at the same time. He's a blessing because he has wide receiver 1 talent. He's a curse because he brings a lot of baggage with him. So far, CJ Stroud has handled it very well. And I think that, Stephon Diggs is very comfortable now in this Texans offense. And so I expect Stephon Diggs to continue putting up bigger and bigger numbers. But also, there's potential for that room to get a little bit crowded and a little bit uncomfortable if, CJ Stroud continues feeling more confident in Nico Collins' development rather than, having Stephon Diggs get more targets. So it's going to be an awkward balance there. But overall, all 4 of these players can be very intriguing prop bets for this weekend. But let me know what you think in the comments. These are just my picks for the weekend in terms of prop bets that I think can hit. But I want to know your opinions as well. Let me know if I was wrong in my sentiment about choosing some prop bets over others, or you like the prop bets that I gave to you guys today. But it's all up to you. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate all the comments as well. But coming up next, we are looking at my last positional ranking of the week in terms of the defense and special teams. Which defense and special teams units will stand out this week? And we'll be right back to talk about them right after this short break.